Welcome to the Sample Podcast, the number one social dynamics podcast in the world. And today with me, we have a very special guest, someone that I've been wanting to get on the show for so long. This is going to be a big episode, so stay tuned. We have the founder and CEO of Hubi, the fastest growing link in bio platform in the world right now. This thing is everywhere. You go on Instagram, this thing is everywhere. He's also the co-founder of Aleph TV, finished his MBA in Marquette University. This man has connected with people, and I'm going to name drop because you have to understand. The Rock, Dana White, Jay Balvin, Jeff Bezos, the NELK Boys, Impulsive, Diplo, Tom Brady, Brooks Koepka, Chris Paul, David Dobrik, 50 Cent, Tyson Fury, and the list goes on. Former lacrosse player, Mr. Jordan Greenfield. How are you today, sir?
Good, Sam. Thanks for having me. Long overdue, but I'm excited to be on the pod, man.
I didn't even know you were a former lacrosse player, so that is new information to me. So take us back to before all of this, where you've thrown the biggest party in Los Angeles last week with the biggest entertainers. Take us back to where it first began for you, and kind of your growth to where you are now, becoming the CEO, the founder of one of the fastest growing, link in bio platforms in the world, and all your other entrepreneurial efforts.
Yeah, and so I'm trying to think a good starting point for this. So I was an athlete growing up. I am the youngest of four siblings. I have three older sisters, and so I think a little bit of the charm I do have comes from that. But always a very competitive kid growing up, always very entrepreneurial. I think my superpower has always been connecting the right people at the right time. I've been doing it long before I was making money off of doing it. I went to grad school. So I went to college, undergrad at Fairfield University. I played lacrosse there, and I did 1 year of grad school out in Milwaukee. But lacrosse is a very wealthy sport by nature. And so my teammates throughout the years at Fairfield and then at Marquette as well, but also the kids I coached came from wealthy backgrounds. And so I've been used to, over the years, being around wealthy individuals, being able to talk money with people. And I have just always had a really good sense of one thing I always try and do is I always try and provide value for people first. And I think that's really paid off in a lot of ways for me. Out of graduate school, I did work in biotech because nobody really cared about consumer technology or influencer marketing. And in the Boston area, everyone really just cared about biotech because of all the major universities they had there. But I quickly realized that was not my passion. And when I jumped out of working at biotech when I was probably 24 years old, for the next 3-4 years, I was doing my own thing, and I was doing a lot of consulting stuff and beginning to craft up this idea for Hubi. But there was a 3 or 4 year period there early in my 20s where I was doing a lot of work for a lot of people for free. And I was just trying to figure out where my seat was around the table. And what I found was that people may think there's no way in hell that this Jewish kid from Dover, Mass, who doesn't have any connections in the entertainment space, doesn't come from that world at all. My dad doesn't know famous people. He's not in the entertainment world or in the technology world. So people may think that there's no way you can provide value for someone like 50 Cent, but there is ways. And so for a lot of these years, I was just doing whatever I could to provide value of people that were completely out of my reach. People would think, or people that I didn't have any reason to sit around the same table as. And I think 4 or 5 years later, those investments and relationships have really paid off.
No, I can imagine. So take us back. You did work for a lot of years for free, which is something that I did. Invested 2 years, fully paid for. When you look back and those years, would you say that they're the formidable years that got you kind of thinking the way that you think now? Were they the years that you got around the people that you didn't previously, like the belief system, you didn't think you'd be able to get around them, and that really changed the ball for you, would you say?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot to it. I think I've always, and I think this might be a little bit built into like my stubbornness, I've never wanted to feel like I owe anyone anything.
Of
And I
course.
think there's probably positives and negatives to that, but like
Mm,
my whole mindset is I always want to over deliver for people. And I think that
right.
like a lot of times people say, give for the joy of giving. And
Mm,
if you're looking for something in return, then that's considered a bargain. I wouldn't say necessarily that like when I'm doing stuff in favors for people that I'm keeping score of that,
yep.
but you do get this sense of like, okay, if I'm going to have somebody else's best interest in mind and I'm going to continue to provide value for them,
Yep.
there should be something that reciprocates on the other end. And even if you hedge your bet and say for instance 20 of these prominent people throughout the years, I go and I try and provide as much value as possible for them,
Hmm.
even if 19 of those 20 don't come full circle and one of them comes full circle and ends
Mm.
up paying back all the value and efforts I put forward for them, it's going to pay off in the long run. I think I've seen that come full circle.
The one thing that you taught me was almost two, that you have to wait. Like it's not something that you're going to get straight away. You offer value, and then from there you're going to get it right in return. I think you put the idea of me of like waiting. It might be a year, it might be 2 years, but eventually you'll be able to come full circle and ask them for something else.
Absolutely.
Where did that, like, where did you understand that? Because that's something that as soon as people give a lot of value, as you say, you're a big advocate of that, give value first. Where did you learn to be able to be like, okay, where's the cutoff for you? Also too at the same time, where's the idea where you learn, okay, well, it takes a long time. You got to be patient with these things. And where is it where it cuts off, where you've given too much value and now the relationship is kind of breaking down? Where's that balance for you?
It's really interesting. I mean, I come across a lot of people in like the early stage company type stuff. The
Mm,
the people I'd refer them as like the paperwork people. So
yes.
like the people that are on 1, 2 phone calls and they're like, okay, what is my interest in this? Where's my paperwork? Like, and for me, the paperwork people are the ones that aren't confident in the long time value they can bring, because if you're so concerned about the paperwork on day 2 or day 3, then you're probably capping out in terms of the value you can bring, because you're saying right now, give me my chips. If you believe that you have a continued value add, then there's no reason for those people to shy away on week 2, week 3, because they're going to
Yes.
continue coming back to the well for more knowledge, more strategy, whatever it may be.
Hmm.
um, in terms of the patience, it's a really good question. I think that I've had a couple surreal moments over the last couple of weeks, because I think that for the first time in my life, and I consider myself a winner. I think I've done a lot of stuff successful throughout my life, but I've always set high goals.
Mm,
And for the first time in my life, if I look back to, I actually, it was right around Thanksgiving time of 2020. So fall of 2020. So we're coming up on 2 years this fall,
mm,
when we had received confirmation that we had raised a small amount of capital for Hubi. We had
mm.
sort of this MVP built, and I was at Arlen's for Thanksgiving down in, I think it was at that time down in Venice Beach. And
Yep.
when we got wind that we had raised that 215 capital, um, we went and celebrated. We went and took, we didn't go to, we didn't go to all out. We went and got Nobu to go, and we sat on the beach right outside of Nobu,
Mm,
down in Malibu. And we sort of planned out like, this is what our freaking goal is. And for the first time after, and it was probably the highlight of my trip, as crazy as it sounds, you said we threw the best party in LA. 2 days after, I took my team down to Malibu and we
yep.
parked the car, we got out and we walked down the beach there. And it's a little fucking surreal even thinking about it. But for me, that was the highlight of my trip, because we walked by that same exact spot where we discussed these fucking goals.
Yeah.
And for the first time in my life, like I said, I've won in my life, but for the first time in my life, I fucking manifested something a year out and we hit every mark. And that's never happened
Amen.
to me. And so I think like it's a combination of things. But I think it comes down to belief in yourself. Like
Mm,
it goes back to what I was just saying before about the paper guy. Like if you feel like you're providing too much value for people and they don't at a certain point feel like they need to take care of you, then you've capped out in terms of the value, or earlier than probably you expected. And I think it all depends on the circumstances or the
of
individuals.
course.
But for me, and I hinted at this in the Instagram post I threw up recently. that night that just happened at David's
Mm.
house, I played that in my head 4 years ago. Like I
Damn.
knew, I knew David
Hmm.
through an extension of friends.
Hmm.
I knew I was building a relationship with 50. There
Yep.
might have been a couple things different where the bar was set up, where the stage was set up, this, that. I knew that was going to happen.
Yep.
And so I think it's just like there is a lot to like having a plan, sticking to that plan, and having belief in yourself. But we're sitting here after a successful run, and it could have been completely different. And I could give a
Mm.
million examples of this, like the stupid whatever 40K of debt that I ran up when I didn't have money because I wanted to be around the right people, and I
Yep.
believed in the process of it, and I believed it would all come full circle and pay off.
Mm.
But like, had I not got figured out a way to get here, then I probably would have caught myself in an iffy scenario. But I had belief in myself that it would work out in the end.
That's amazing that you saw something like 4 years before, then you had the goals of actually like you got to a point where you could achieve it, and then you executed on it, which is what you
Yeah.
said, like self-ability. That's crazy. That's what a lot of people like. I feel like they suffer. They don't have a vision. They don't have a goal, and that's where your vision, your goal is just so crystal clear. Well, if I can feel that I can see your vision, that's when you knew it. You're doing it right.
Yeah.
Because now
And
you're putting
no
it.
one will ever believe me except the closest people around me. But like, you ask Cass, you ask Bianca, this shit's been talked about. And so it has been really cool. And then it's also about surrounding yourself with the right people as well. And that's a whole nother topic. But yeah, it's been an exciting year.
Well, 100%. Yeah, no, it seems like you're on the up and up and up. Now let's get into the more the connection part of it, because you're the one that got me onto Jerry Weintraub and his books and everything like that. You were the one that finagled that sort of, the understanding of that, how great that book is by him. And so my when I got more into social circle and teaching guys how to connect with people, I always had to look up to people that I thought were better than me so I could grow. And one of those people was you. So your ability to be able to connect with the right people at the right time. What is your secret? I know that you talk about that. You came back that your family, you started from your dad and stuff. You started to, kind of gain those skills from him as you grew up and you kind of were around it. Where was the pivotal point where you were like, okay, this is actually working, and this is kind of like the way that I want to do, especially in the connector scene and being able to connect with the right people?
I think it's a really interesting topic because I think that, and I know like you and Arlen have really like picked this stuff apart and
Mm.
really tried to dive into the details of what it is exactly, from like even like a scientific standpoint, or like a
Yeah, of
psychological
course.
standpoint, like how all this stuff works.
Yep.
Um, for me, it really has come natural. And I think
Mm.
the biggest thing when connecting people, and I think like my skill set has been seeing people from differing worlds. So like, one example, and I'll give one more 50 Cent example, but like, go back 4 years into the past here, and I saw 50 Cent at a 76ers game
Mhm.
promoting his La Chamere champagne. He was down with Michael Rubin down there. I obviously had a tie to his team. I saw that he was doing this whole thing in an arena, and I said immediately, okay, in the back of my head, it's always like I have a
Taken
list, and I
over.
have a list. I have a list on my notes on my phone. It's just called the list, and this is another manifestation thing. It's just the fucking people I want to provide value to, and these names are fucking crazy. And the
Yes.
amount of names, and then the amount of names I've crossed off my list is that's my first thing I want to do for these people. I
Okay.
don't want an investment check from these people. I don't want them posting something from me. I don't want to take a picture with them. I don't want an autograph. I want to provide value to them. That's number one on my list for these people. And
Right.
that's how like I sort of benchmark this stuff. So 50 was down at the 76ers game. Immediately in the back of my head, okay, I know the Kraft family.
Mm.
He's at an arena. He's at an arena trying to bring awareness to his champagne. There's probably something to do with the sports organization there. He probably wants to get that into the arena. You know what? Let's toss out an invite for 50 to come up to New England and introduce him to Bob Kraft. So I had a relationship with Bob Kraft's niece. I gone to school with her years ago. And so for me, it's like, okay, 50 Cent and Bob Kraft, although they're both celebrities, they're probably not crossing paths too often. If I can figure out a way to get these two guys into the same room, and there's going to be value in it for both of them. Bob Kraft loves his celebrity friends. He loves having celebrities at the New England Patriots game. 50 Cent wants to get his La Chimere into Gillette Stadium. And so I end up inviting 50's team up. He's like, great. It was a Monday night game, Green Bay versus the Patriots. And 50 comes on field with me before the game. He goes to all the luxury boxes throughout the stadium. He's signing the La Chimere bottles. They're all putting a big order in for his champagne. Him and Bob end up hitting it off big time. And from that point on, that was the first time I provided value for 50. And then throughout the years, I continued to figure out ways to. But had that not happened, then this party last week wouldn't have happened. And that party last week, outside of like 50's team allowing us to, me and Bianca to go to some shows with them, and him being good to us every time we're around them. That was the first thing of value I received in return, real value 4 years later. And so that all obviously goes back to the patience thing as well. But I just got sidetracked. I don't even know if I just answered your question.
No, you did. You did. No, it's amazing to see how your brain works, especially with the list. Because I heard of the list through our buddy Arlen, that you had a few certain lists. So I started to do this stuff of like particular people, in which it's amazing that you threw it out there, because it is something that if you kind of can wrap your head around, you can connect with these people. These people are not like demigods or anything, that you can't connect with these people. There's always a specific way. I say social media is great because the first word of social media is being social, right? Yeah. So there's a way that you could connect with these people no matter how big they are. So we're talking the big. What is the process that you do with the big, especially with Hubi? I'm talking your NELK boys, your Dana Whites, your Jeff Bezos, like that. That's some crazy level. Like there's some B, D, C list celebrities, and then there's like, you're talking the richest man in the freaking world right now. How are you doing that? Like like Tom Brady, your Brooks Koepka, like these are huge names.
Yeah.
Is it the same process? It's like, it's no different. They're just people. Is this is how you kind of come to these situations?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's one other guy that's important to say that like I'm having another surreal moment with this gentleman, but his name's @John on Instagram. He's
I know John.
He's the president of NELK. He's the president of Full Send. He had a company called Shot Studio before. He's been business partners with Justin Bieber for years. He was business partners with Floyd Mayweather. When I got into this space 5-6 years ago, and like wanted to go out on my entrepreneurial journey, wanted to work on sort of the intersection of technology and entertainment, John was the guy. Okay. Like he was the guy for me, top of the list. I've been on friggin' 3 calls with him this week. I was on a Zoom with him yesterday with him and Kyle. Like, and like this stuff is surreal, but like I had a map, I had a plan, and I stayed to that and I executed on it. And so with someone like John, it was the same thing. These rich A-list celebrities, wealthy people, they don't want to open the gates to the outsiders. Yeah. They need an excuse to open the gates. And so like 50, Jeff Bezos, John, like they don't need, in their eyes, they don't need anything from anyone, especially guys like me. So reaching out to these people and asking them for something is the number one mistake. You have a long journey ahead of you if you want anything in return from these people. The first thing you need to do is you need to show them why in the world you should be hanging around. And the only way to do that is to provide something of value to them. They don't want freaking anything else from you. It's just the reality of it. And so you'll feel as you start getting into this upper echelon of whether it's wealth, whether it's fame, whatever it may be, you'll feel the barrier. Yep. You'll feel the pushback as to like, why are we letting this kid in? Right. And the more value and the more reasons you can give them, and the least amount of mistakes, because one wrong move with these individuals, you're never around them again. And that goes back to like being short-minded. You don't need a fucking picture with them. And if you do it on the 15th time hanging around them, not on the first time. You don't need autographs. You don't need to ask for favors. Like that stuff is a quick route to the back of the line. And so it all comes back to like, if you want to hang around these people, the first thing you need to do is you need to figure out a way to bring a lot of value and to prove why you should be sitting around that table. And anything else, like, and so in regards to with Hubi, I mean, it's been a domino of things. We have, and so for like, I'll give a big shout out to Steph Jones, a woman named Steph Jones, who's a big publicist. She represents The Rock, she represents J Balvin, she represents Jeff Bezos, represents Tom Brady. But Tom Brady's managed, his socials managed by a bunch of Boston kids. When I say a bunch of Boston kids, I mean kids my age. A kid named Gilad, who's been his creative director for years. Gilad came across Hubi and he loved Hubi, and he thought it was a great solution for Tom. And so I ended up getting connected with Gilad. Tom ended up using Hubi, and all of a sudden Steph Jones notices it and she loved it. And so I got on the phone with Steph Jones, and Steph Jones in a lot of ways is further along in her career. She's married, got several kids, but she's been doing it for years. And I think the way that I've got here has resonated with her a lot, because I think we're cut from the same cloth, so to speak, in a lot of ways. So that ended up, and we have a lot of these pools where like somebody will be onboarded like that, and then it will lead to a whole umbrella of people. So like she ended up sending Jeff Bezos' page to him, and he loved it. And then Jeff Bezos' new girlfriend loved it, and so she was linked immediately. And then they had The Rock transition over, and so we've got a whole bunch of cool stuff that we're working on with them there. But in regards to interacting and talking with these people, it's exactly that. I think the more you, and I think I heard you talk about, I don't know if it was on Instagram or a prior podcast, but talk about it all comes from experience. It's like these are the more you're around these people, the more you realize they are just friggin' regular people. They have the same issues going on a daily basis. We too. They don't want to be overwhelmed in the same way where like I'm in the middle of my work week here. I don't want freaking people coming in and out of my space. I don't want to be putting on a fake face for people. These people are the same as us. And so it does come with the experience, and hopefully not a lot of trial and error, because in this world, the error will once. Yeah, exactly. But it's been a learning experience, but I've never, and I think I learned a lot of this from my buddy Quarantine, Corentin. I think people get confused when I say quarantine now after the pandemic, but he's been in the space for a long time. He worked with 50 and shot studio for years. He used to take me out on to some of the shows and some of the tours, and he just made it very clear, like none of that plays here. None of that plays. It's not put your freaking phone away and talk to these people like real people. And if you don't, it's going to be your last time hanging around here.
It seems like there are key players around these people that you almost have to, they're the people that you really have to get to know very well. Like they're the key deciders whether you do it or not. So that's very interesting. I didn't know that. Now, your way that you, okay, let me the way that you give value to people, how do you identify? Because value, I've talked about on this podcast, can be a plethora of things. It's not just money. In this sort of day and age, when you're in that upper echelon, money talks, yes, but money also doesn't talk. It's like they've got too much of that, right? How do you identify where you can give these people or people that you want to connect with the most amount of value possible? Like, how are you identifying, like, when you had that situation with 50 Cent and Bob Kraft, it's like, how did you come up with that? Or is that a natural process? You can see them, like see the kind of the missing gap and the missing connection that you could make. What's your process for that connection that you come up with? Like, oh, this person needs this. Is that how you think? Or it's like it kind of cultivates from something else?
So I've got my list, right?
Yep.
I've got my list of people.
Yep.
I'm watching those people. I'm watching what they're doing, what is most important to them. In the 50 example, his La Chimera is his focus. I think it's Sire Liquors, whatever it is his focus. So that set up a light bulb for me.
Yep.
You're talking about all the people in my network right now. I'll give a little teaser here.
Yeah.
What's the biggest thing NELK and Full Send are doing right now?
You got your Happy Dad, you got your podcast, which is number 2 in the world.
Podcast. Yeah. Right? Podcast. What are they doing right now? They're getting the biggest people in the world on?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
What do you think I'm trying to do for John and Kyle?
Get them on the platform to give them the biggest reach and the most exposure possible.
Well, they're getting the biggest guests in the world on. And so I have access to some people that they don't have on.
Yes, of course.
All right. So I see this Full Send podcast going on, and John took notice of what we were doing. It's been years of persistency with him, trying to figure out ways to provide value. Now I know I've been watching it. I've been watching friggin' Trump. I've been watching AB. I've been watching all these guys come through the podcast. That's their main focus. For me, the back of my head when I'm watching those is, who can I get on there?
Yes. How can I
Right?
facilitate that? Wow.
Value.
Okay.
It's a value add to both of them. So, I mean, it starts with my list. I've got my eye on those guys. What are they doing? What do I have access to that they don't have access to? And how can I connect those two dots?
What's your value that you can like kind of insert yourself in to be able to help them in like that win-win almost, or the win just straight for them? That is interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, I haven't thought about it like that, but it all stems from my list. I'm not like, and I'll see stuff pop up where I know I can bring value to people as well. And I shouldn't say like, there's levels to this.
Yes.
So like for the list type people, that's where my radar always is. There's plenty of people on a daily basis that I'm trying to on a business level that aren't like outward stories or visible on social or shit like that, where I'm always trying to provide value for those people as well. But I think in regards to this exercise and talking about like the high level stuff here, that's sort of the way I think about it, and it stems down as well.
It's almost, you're tapped into the culture so heavily, which I love, because it's what I like to surround myself with, because I'm tapped in heavily to the culture, trying to understand what is going on a level that is not being talked about at this point. It's like this like energetic level that you can see how things are shifting and everything like that. Is that with Hubi and everything that you're doing, is that what you're kind of like, you're trying to see the trends before they're happening and sort of shift the business model towards that?
I think there's two parts to Hubi. I think that there's the technology and like what our plans are in terms of the technology, and then there's the brand and what we're trying to build in terms of what Hubi is outside of the technology itself. And I think we definitely try and be on the forefront on both sides. But I think for us, like the bigger thing, and we have some great stuff that we're releasing in terms of the product that's far more advanced than any others in this space. But the main focus will always be the brand. Like you can never underestimate the value of a brand. And one of my mentors, a guy named Matt Folk, who sold his agency. It's called Basic Agency. I think he sold it. He owned it outright. He sold it for like 250 million last fall. This is like a 32-year-old kid. And he told me when I was having dinner with him in Catch in Vegas, he's like, the revenue numbers didn't match that 250. He's like, never underestimate the value of the brand. And so I think for us, obviously with Hubi, there's this exclusivity factor of like we're invite only. You can either apply or be invited by an existing user to the platform. What does it mean to be a Hubi member outside of just using the technology and having that link in your bio? And I think that's where the brand comes in. So things like, and so if you look at what we're doing with David's house, isn't just fucking throwing a party. That is a look forward as to what's to come for future Hubi in the future. Those types of things are going to become one aspect of what it means to be a Hubi member. And it doesn't have to be a party with 50 Cent performing every time. It could be a panel. It could be like whatever it may be, access to certain things that outsiders don't have access to. But that's not being built in technology. Those are experiences. Those are the ability for our users to connect, to engage with one another, to collaborate with one another. And that's where like the additional value of outside of just having a better technology in your profile, that's where the bigger value comes in and the longer term vision is.
Damn, even giving value to the members of it. That's the crazy thing. It's every level.
We spend, and this stems down to my team too, Sam. Yeah. It's like the same way I think is like David's podcast. He just had on Harry Jowsey, right? Katie Austin's podcast. She just had on Harry Jowsey. Yeah. Todd's podcast. They just had on Emma Brooks, Anna Shumati, and Sab, right?
Yeah.
That's the way my team's thinking from top to bottom. And so it's like, even though we don't have a collaboration tool built into the product yet, where we can match make our users to collaborate on podcasts, we're still doing that. That's still part of being part of the Hubi community right now. And that goes back to like what I built the premise of this on is like provide value first. And I think like we're doing that outside of just the product that we're providing for these people.
Oh, I can imagine. That's crazy. Funny story. I just got a message back from Harry's PR team this morning as I jumped on.
For what?
Oh, I asked him about. I sent a little sneaky email. I do this little trick where I send header things. I wanted Harry to come on the podcast because he's an Australian boy, right? And I put I could do this little sneaky
Dude,
thing.
Harry's my boy.
Harry's the G, bro. I hear stories. I hear stories from one of his friends back in Adelaide. Good guy, amazing. I put RE.
He's one of the best kids.
Oh yeah, of
No,
course.
you finish.
No, I
I'll
put
tell you my Harry story.
RE. I put RE,
Yeah.
so like return, like it's like a return email. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, just talking about the email, the podcast suggestion. Just want to hear back from Harry's information. Is that all good? And they're like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I've lost the email. Could you please send it back? Like all these little hacks that I do. But yeah, go on.
That's funny. No, so Harry's great. Like Harry, I met Harry probably only 2 months ago. He came to Boston, and I didn't know anything about Harry, and he's one of my favorite freaking kids in the world. But what ended up happening was, so Big Night Entertainment out of Boston's an investor of ours. So they're the ones that own all the nightclubs that you'll see us at. They own the Grand, Big Night Live. Anytime anyone's coming to perform in Boston, any of the big names, they're going to big night venues. And so, that plays into the story as well in terms of Hoobie, because before we moved out to Vegas, before sort of Hoobie 2.0, the way we inserted ourselves in a lot of this is we were the go-to guys for anytime celebrities, creators, anyone was coming to Boston. I was the one facilitating hotels, nightclubs, sports games, all that shit we were taking care of in exchange for sharing on social. And so Harry's a Hoobie user. He came to us. He just signed up for the platform. And he was great. Like he was always DMing Hoobie. He was asking for invites so he can invite his cast members to use Hoobie. And the Big Night guys reached out to me because they wanted Harry to host a club night in Boston.
Yeah, of course.
And they were like, we see Harry's a Hoobie user. Do you guys, are you guys close to them? I was like, no, but I can definitely get to him. We have contacts of all these people. So we invite Harry to come to Boston to host the nightclub event for Big Night Entertainment. And he gets to town. He's with his buddy, Zach. And immediately when I picked him up, it's just like joke after joke out of his mouth. Like he has full diarrhea of the mouth. And so we get in the car. I end up bringing them. I bring them to grab food right after we get to the get them from the airport, drop them off at the casino, and then that weekend we hosted them throughout town. He couldn't have been more generous and more, because we've worked with a lot of these people before, and you never know what you're getting with these creators. And like one thing, like people like to say too, is just a side note, like we're not famous enough to hang out with Jordan, like try and like give us a hard time. And like my whole philosophy on that is like, I have plenty of non-famous friends that I do work with. My life right now, all of my relationships are work. And so we found like one of my best friends, Toddy Smith from the Vlog Squad crew. He would be my boy regardless. He just happens to, I was in this world. And so I'm going to hone in on the people that I resonate the most within that world. There's plenty of famous people or people with social followings before that I passed on. And then I found my group of people in that world that I wanted to be close with. So once again, when Harry came to town, and I always say too, like you would never be given like our friend that's studying pre-med or is a doctor shit for being out until midnight with like the best doctors in the world. But because our shit looks fun, people get pissy and are like, oh, too famous. Fuck that. So Harry comes to town, and he was just so genuine, so real the entire time. He's offering to pay for stuff the entire time. I'm like, dude, you're here getting paid. Stop offering to pay for stuff. He was so great with my baby boy, so good to the entire Hoobie family. And you don't see that often with people like Harry. And I think he's obviously become famous pretty quickly overnight, but like anybody, I'll talk to Tara, who's his management from Unruly, who I do work with. And like everybody just has glowing reviews of the kid, because it's not like Harry says stuff that I could name 50 other of the top creators in the world that if it came out of their mouth, they would be canceled tomorrow. But because of the authenticity of the way Harry says stuff, and there's such a joking, kind-hearted manner to it, he gets away with absolute murder. But because all of it's becoming from such like a it's such like an authentic place, like he's just joking around, but like he's made himself almost uncancelable because of the way he goes about that stuff. And so
Yeah,
I love Harry. He's pretty inappropriate, but he is the funniest kid to have around.
in Australia, we look at him as the guy that's made it almost, you know, because again, he did a very smart thing, moved straight out to LA, exactly what you're supposed to do, right? Leave this little country that we're in because so we look at him as like he made it. He's the one that we're trying to push a lot of the time from here, just because of that.
Dude, I love the kid. I think he's a great kid to look up to. And I love seeing people like him win, because it's just like, he's one of those guys too, where I'll hit up Harry and like, I'm playing the same game for him, but I'll hit up Harry and be like, hey, Harry, do you mind connecting me with Alex Cooper? I want to see if she wants to do a live podcast in Boston. No problem. Right. He knows. And that's somebody there that he knows I'm never going to like, he's not concerned about his papers.
Yep.
He knows he's going to be able to bring continued value to me. Same with on my end. And so like people like that are just so comfortable in their own shoes with the continued value they're going to bring. Like those are the people you want to surround yourself with.
To have those people that are comfortable connecting to other people. How does it feel now, you becoming more in the spotlight and you becoming more in the sort of around these people, you know, your presence, people talking about you're a celebrity before you're even a celebrity. That's a lot of the time how I would describe you. You know, you are the person that has immense value, but it doesn't have to always correlate with how talked about you are or how famous you are. You know, you've come from a person that has value. Have you just continued to work on your value as a person, try to offer as much to the world, try to connect, start to build your sort of your value?
For me, and I think John's kind of an example of this, but he also has several million followers on social. Like for me, the guy in the room that has the least followers, and maybe even at that point, the least amount of money, is the most interesting guy in the room. Because why the fuck is he there? And so like my goal has never been to be famous. I don't care if I have 0 followers on social. The reason people like John always intrigued me, or the people like Zach Bia have always intrigued me, is because there's a secret sauce there.
Yes.
Right? Like there's no question with John, like, why is Anita famous? Why is Alesso famous? Why is Kyle famous? Everyone knows why they're famous. Everyone knows the value they provide. What value does John provide that he's the only one sitting at that table that's not getting on stage performing?
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like that's the interesting stuff to me. Like it's very clear that like these individuals that are famous for a certain reason, but anybody that you're sort of Zach B it's become more clear over the last couple of years, but for a long time there, people were like, what is this right here?
It was like a glitch in the matrix almost. You're like, what, how?
Yeah.
That's
fascinating. You want to know what Zach B was doing for a lot of years?
Tell me, because I don't know.
I don't even know, but my guess is he was providing value for free for a lot of years to a lot of prominent people.
Yes. Definitely. To be able to, as you said, be in that situation with not the general, you're famous for this, famous for that. You've got this money, you've got that. That person had intrinsic value that wasn't displayed. For some reason, it's valuable.
Yeah.
That's fucking key. Hosting, I would love to get your opinion on, because I've seen you host a lot of people over in your Boston and stuff like that. And that's something that I definitely want to get into more of the Gold Coast. I love this podcast. It's really just for me to talk to you and be like, wow, your fucking brain a lot of time. You know, when you were hosting, so you've made connections before with your hotels, your as you said, your nightclubs, your this, your that. The first steps into kind of starting to promote your little events and throwing events, where did you first get into the event scene, being able to throw the events, or has it something you've done from a kid where it was birthday parties you'd organize and stuff like that?
I've always been the party guy.
I love it.
Yeah.
You knew how to throw a good party back in college?
Yeah, for sure. But like, I'm trying to dig deeper for you into like the psychology behind it. I think that I've always been like, there are a lot of people out there that are vibe people, right? Yeah. Like you're talking about some of these, like the providing the value thing is one major thing for these top echelon people.
Yep.
If you can, like, providing value for them is providing them a good experience, right? If you can provide them a good experience where they're having fun and they're freaking getting treated like a rock star and all that shit, that's a clear value add. And so for me, I mean, it's always been about getting the right people into the right room at the same time.
Mhm.
In regards to the events we used to put on in Boston, a lot of that stemmed off of like hosting these individuals, trying to create an exciting curated experience for them. Like a lot of this is going to be challenging for me because, you know, I've got a 3-month-old baby boy now, but like
Yeah.
a lot of the openness to do more.
Mhm.
And this might not live for me in terms of like the A-listers, but if we're talking like some of the biggest creators in the world, or even like the reality TV stars or athletes,
Mm.
the openness to do work and the openness to trust and to engage with people a lot of times comes out of one of those experiences.
Mhm.
And like the credibility of creating a memorable moment for someone.
Yeah.
And like we
Mhm.
were all about creating those memorable moments, not only so that we know those people, because there was a couple of folds to it. When you're trying to create a memorable moment, you want them sharing on social, but
Yeah.
then also it's impacting them emotionally as well because they're having a good time at that experience. And so
Yes.
I don't have a concrete answer for you in terms of like the psycho, like how I really got into putting on these experiences for people, but I've always gotten a high out of connecting people and seeing them go on to do other things, like
Right.
connecting to
Mm.
incredible people from my network and seeing that be valuable. And like and
Mm.
I've had conversations with this about Arlen, is like I'm so closed off with my network until somebody proves to me
Yeah.
that they deliver time and time again. So for
Right.
instance, like Blake Wynn
Mhm.
from Las Vegas, who's an
Yeah.
investor of ours, Steve's nephew. Blake, I got connected with Blake probably 2 years ago now. He became an investor in Hubi.
Mhm.
The kid's only 22 years old, but time and time again, Blake would say we get something done, even if it sounded ridiculous, and he delivered. To the point now where if Blake asks me for an introduction to someone,
Yeah.
or if someone's looking for something that I know Blake can provide, I don't think twice about introducing Blake to them.
Mhm.
These are people that like 99.9% of the world, I would never even think about introducing them, but I'll jump into a group chat and immediately introduce them because I know what they're going to get with Blake. And so
Mm.
I'm very selective of the people we do open the network up to. But if it makes sense, I'm not selective because I'm like, what's in it for me if you guys end up here? I just
Yeah.
don't want to get egg in my face 6 months down the road if I introduce somebody to whoever it is, Paulie D, and they end up fucking him over and I get egg in my face because of that.
Yes, that's sort of the chain effect that rolls on
Yeah.
from it. Oh, I totally understand that. That makes a lot more sense. That
Yeah.
makes a huge amount of sense for people that are hearing that. That's key for me. I think that's key for me because I've done that
Yeah.
recently. I've had it a fucking backfire, and I'm like, oh god damn it. Then you've got a headache to deal with, and you got two people pissed off at you, and you're like,
Yeah. And that list, like whatever your list is,
yep.
those people don't get you. You start building a relationship with one of those people on the list. You fucking build that thing for 6 months at least before anyone's touching that, because like it's not introduction time yet until you've
Mm,
solidified that relationship. You need to see what it is that make them tick. You need to understand them. You need to see if looping them in with someone is going to be if they're going to look at that as disrespectful, be uncomfortable with that. Like you need to get to know how, like, what makes those individuals tick on a case by case basis.
fuck. Oh shit, that just blew my mind. Holy shit, I didn't even think of that. Yo,
You gotta get your list going, man. My whole life stems off of that.
a list, Google document list. Jesus Christ. Okay, that's just put me in a freaking coma there. Yeah, that makes so much sense. Holy shit, Jordan. That
Yeah.
does. Because that's one of the, I reckon that's a huge sticking point of mine. Introduction to other
Yeah.
people so quickly, too quickly. Wow. All right.
Yeah.
Fuck, that put me on a. So where's the future for you for Hubi? Where's kind of like what goals are you setting now? Because now you've reached your goals. What's your next goals that you're putting on?
Yeah.
Well,
Um,
you've had your baby boy, so I guess that is the most that's what a lot of your time is being devoted to.
yeah. I mean, I think ultimately with Hubi, we want to turn it into one of the biggest tech stories of the entire year this year. I think we have a pretty exciting 18-month roadmap ahead of us. We
Mhm.
have gotten opportunities to possibly sell off Hubi. We're not nearly in a position yet where we're ready to get rid of our baby. We
Yeah,
want to
of
turn this
course.
into the biggest influencer technology company in the world. And I think as an extension of that, it can turn into a media play as well, where bigger companies want to tap into Hubi for the event, the Hubi user base for event types like we just did, and experiences like we just did. I think similar to what you see at like at Coachella with Revolve Festival. There's a reason we named that first party Hubi Fest, and there's going to be a continuation of that. And so who knows where that will be 2 years from now. But with Hubi, I think the sky really is the limit. I think that we will be taking this thing for a run for at least 3 more years here. And I think ultimately we're looking for a partner that could sort of bring us under their umbrella with access to their resources and obviously some of their capital as well. But we have raised a bunch of money with Hubi, but we want to turn Hubi into the biggest tech platform on the influencer side, like I mentioned before. That transitions the best from Web 2 into Web 3. And I think we have a lot of ideas as it pertains to all of that. I want to continue being a serial entrepreneur. Obviously, I co-founded Aloativa as well. I'm involved in the Vlog Squad CBD company, Happy Face. I want to, like my long-term goal is I want to find a bunch of fucking hungry kids like myself, and I want to invest big time into them. And so I think long-term, I do want to have at least at a minimum be an angel investor, but probably have some form of venture fund where I can invest back into these individuals. And I think I would probably want to focus on the same sort of arena we're focused on now, which is that sort of the intersection of technology, influence, and entertainment. And yeah, I think there's a really exciting road ahead for that.
That's your perfect role, Eric, and you fit that so well. Being able to see value before it's even there and see how you can add it. That's amazing. Last question, Jordan, before we go. I know your time is very valuable. If you could change one thing about the world, what would that be?
One thing about the world, what would that be? I think it's and there's a lot of major issues in the world right now, so I don't want to underplay any of like the major issues, but I think just from a mindset standpoint, as it pertains to my world, I think this idea of overnight success needs to be lost. And I think that people need to start thinking about this and realistically thinking about like, okay, if I'm really going to give this a run, what's my 5-year roadmap and what's my 5-year plan? And don't expect the results to happen overnight. I think there was one quote that I actually showed 50 before he went on stage, and it was him doing a talk on some like panel discussion. And what 50 ended up saying in it, and I was like, 50, I just want to let you know how much this shit means to me. And he's like, it resonated with him too. He's like, I love that. I know exactly when I filmed that. But sort of the premise of it is that 50 said it never happens when you think you're ready. When the material's good, and I'm going to send you this after, and the way he said it is, the material's good and you expect people to pay more attention, that's really the time when you're building skin thick enough to survive when it does happen. So like in my eyes, this is the break right before January of 2021, right after like when we went through the suck of a year, figuring out like how are we going to pivot Hubi. And it's like during that period, and even still, we're building the skin thick enough right now so that when this thing really, really does pop, we're going to have the skin thick enough to survive that. And so I think for people like getting that point through, that like, even though you think the song that you just put out is the best in the world and people should be paying more attention to it, that sort of pushback you're getting from the outside world is giving you the confidence so that 3, 4, 5 songs down the road, when you push that out and now all of a sudden you have this huge platform and you're hearing all this nonsense from people, the haters out there that you're going to get when you do have success, now because you went through that shit prior, when it wasn't resonating with people, and you're sitting up at night and you're like, why isn't this clicking for me yet? Why isn't this working? Why aren't I seeing results? Now you have that thick skin that's going to allow you to close out the outside world and believe in what you're actually doing at that point when it does pop. So I think that, and then I think the last thing I just want to reiterate, and it just goes back to what we talked about the idea of providing value for people. It's like whoever is number one on your list, think about the coolest thing that they could do for you, whether it be like bringing you on stage or letting you take like whatever the nicest thing possible they could do with you. And then think about how much better it would feel to provide that type of value to that person. And that's your way in the door. That's your way in the door, right? Whoever it is for you, freaking Dan Bilzerian. You don't want Dan Bilzerian inviting you on his boat. You want to find a boat that you can invite Dan Bilzerian on where he's gonna have the best time of his life, right? That's gonna feel a lot better for you than getting an invite to Dan Bilzerian's boat, being no one on that boat.
Being able to give them value.
Yeah.
Dang.
That's what it's all about.
And Jordan, if the people want to find more about you, want to learn more about you, want to be, in the know about everything with Hubie, where can they go?
I would say just tap into Hubie on Instagram, ho.be. You can find us across the web with the same name. And if you want to find me, which you probably don't, Jordan Taylor _47 on Instagram.
Yo, I actually think that fucking follow it's so good, actually. Yeah. Go follow Jordan on Instagram. It's actually a fucking hoot. I love it. Love seeing all the things you're doing. Thank you very much for your time, Miss Jordan Greenfield. I appreciate all your time today.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate you, man.